Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and it's time for another vintage Generation 1 Transformer review. And of course this weekend we're getting close to some major car races. If I remember correctly, the Monaco Grand Prix is this weekend. Next weekend we have the Indianapolis 500, so I thought it'd be appropriate to do a racing car group. So here we have the 1990 Decepticon Micromaster Patrol, the Racetrack Patrol. As stated earlier, the Racetrack Patrol came out in 1990, and they would be one of the last groups of toys released for the Generation 1 line before the line would be discontinued. The group consists of 4 members: Barricade, Roller Force, Groundhog, and Motorhead. And we're going to take like what we've done in previous videos, we're going to take a look at each guy individually and discuss their role within the group and other bits of lore. As usual, first con up will be the leader, Barricade. At least the More Than Meets the Eye guides designate Barricade as the leader of the patrol. Of course, those of you that are familiar with the Michael Bay movies know that Barricade has appeared in those movies. Barricade, of course, appeared in the very first movie as the police car. This is a figure from the Wizards of the Coast Transformers battle game that was released at the same time of the original movie. It's also the only other Barricade I have. I don't have one of those toys that was made, so he'll do for the time being. But as you can kind of tell from some of his parts, you can recognize he was the police car. But at any rate, this was his G1 form where he got his inspiration from. Barricade is an abusive leader to the patrol. He firmly believes that winning is everything. Probably got the inspiration from the Misfits song, Winning is Everything, from the Gem cartoon series. But at any rate, he believes firmly as well that everybody falls into one of two categories: Decepticons and losers. While he is an effective leader, he does tend to lower the morale of the group because he tends to over-obsess over minor transgressions. Like maybe even though they won the race, somebody probably did something they shouldn't have done or took a chance they shouldn't have, and he ends up berating them forever on it, and that kind of hurts overall morale. Taking a look at Barricade's articulation, let's see, we can rotate his arms all the way around at the shoulder, so that's a pretty nice feature on a Micromaster. He does have a joint at the hip, so you can bend his legs at the hip like so. And you can bend his legs at the knee. But since his legs are sort of fused together, they're not entirely fused together, but they will move at the same time together. It does take a little bit of force to only move one of them at a time, or at least they do on my sample. I won't say that's true for every sample, but mine's pretty stiff. This is not a group I had as a kid, folks, so this is obviously one I got as an adult collector, so I don't know if this is just from lack of play or if his legs are really fused together that tightly. Let's see, get him to do one at a time. There, that's a better look. See, you can bend the knees independent. It takes a little effort on mine, but it is doable. Now, to transform Barricade into his alternate mode, the first thing we're going to do is we lower his arms, kind of leave him somewhat parallel to this tire at his hip. Because like I showed you, his arms do go all the way around, so there is nothing really to stop him. Then you'll reach back here on his back, fold up the front of the car, and snap it onto his head. And then back here at his legs, you're going to bend the legs up at the knee so that they fold over like that. And then bend at the hip a little bit to get it sort of flush with the car itself. And then there's Barricade's alternate mode. He's a racing car. That's a little bit better. That's better. It's a racing car. Most specifically, he's a Ligier JS31 Formula One racing car. An upgraded version of the car that the Autobot Mirage becomes. So it's kind of nice to see they're keeping a similar lineage in the toy line. But of course, our little buddy here is pretty small compared to Mirage for the obvious reasons. You know, it's obviously it's undetailed, which is a disappointment. And of course, somewhat unrealistic, since the screw hook that you see in there, that's in the driver's compartment. And as you can see, if there is even a little driver in there, the hinge for folding the front piece up gets in the way of the view. So, not entirely accurate, but for what it is, it's not bad. Now, how does he drive on this table on the all-plastic wheels? Pretty good. Pretty good. This would be kind of fun to race around with. Next up, we'll take a look at Roller Force. Now, while he's not listed in any of the lore as being the second in command of the unit, he is listed as Barricade's favorite member of the team, so it kind of goes without saying he probably is second in command of the unit. Roller Force does like to go at incredibly fast speeds and has no qualms about ramming other vehicles or transformers, or even anything in that matter, out of his way when driving. So he makes himself out to be number one, so it leads to some poor decision making, as oftentimes his ramming skills do leave a little bit to be desired. Like he might hit something at the wrong angle and end up damaging himself and knocking himself out of the race instead of knocking the opponent out of the way. And while he is very cocky of his driving skills, Roller Force knows that the worst driver on the team may actually surpass him. So Roller Force goes out of his way to make sure to discredit Motorhead wherever he can. Now, for Roller Force, his articulation, let's see, you can rotate his arms, but of course his arms, get back here. His arms are blocked by the wheels here on the front piece. And of course, they don't rotate all the way back from the bottom side due to the fact they rub up against the car. So his arms do have limited articulation, but pretty good for a figure of his scale. You can also bend his legs at the hip, like so. These darn butterfingers of mine. And you can also bend his legs at the knee, but unlike Barricade, his are permanently fused together, so there is no individual movement for his legs. Now, to transform Roller Force, you fold his arms down to the sides and lock them into the little pin, which you can see protruding right there. Raise them out a bit and kind of lock them into place. And then you'll take this front piece of the car, fold it up, and snap it onto his head. Then for his legs, you just simply fold them up against the backside of the vehicle. And there's the alternate mode of Roller Force. He's an Baja-style off-road buggy, similar in vein to the Autobot toy Fizzle. So, I'm not crazy about that pink color here. And not because it's normally associated with girls, it's a little too bright and garish. So I really don't find this to be an interesting color for an off-road race car. Especially when you know the car's gonna get dirty. Well, let's see how Roller Force rolls on this table. Not bad. I mean, he could be better. Kind of expected better for an off-road vehicle. So he always tends to swerve. Kind of while the back wheels on this one are kind of tight. It's part of the problem. I don't know if this is a design flaw or what, but they don't roll very well. So he's not going to roll pretty good for us, folks. Sorry about that. Next up, we have Groundhog. Groundhog would obviously come off as the greaser of the team, or mechanic. He's always trying to come up with different ways to soup up their engines, increase their speed and power, or even come up with more ways for them to cheat in all the illegal races that they participate in. So consequently, he's a fan of very loud noise, especially engine noise. So he's often in the maintenance bin, more or less getting his hearing restored due to the fact that he has damaged it so much, constantly tinkering the engines to be so loud that he ends up losing part of his hearing, and thus making him a liability to the group because he can't hear the orders being given to him. At any rate, let's take a look at his articulation, starting with his arms. As you can see, the arms can only go back so far because they flush up against the body of the car. And he can raise his arms up about so far. Again, due to this protrusion here at the top of his arms. Like the others, he can bend at the hip, like so. And he can also bend at the knee. He's a little easier to bend at the knee than what Barricade was. It's still kind of tight, but it is easier. You can bend them one leg at a time, if that's something you want to do. Now, to transform Groundhog, basically take his arms, fold them down along the sides of his body. You'll take the hood here on the back, on his back, and fold it up, snap it in over his head, and then on the back, grab his legs and fold them over and make them flush with the body. And then you have his alternate mode. It's listed in the More Than Meets the Eye guides as a funny car, but it's also listed to be as a Dodge Shelby Charger. And more than likely, with his tinkering, he's probably got the most souped-up Hemi in there, so maybe that Dodge Hemi dude would probably be riding in him. I mean, the purple job's okay, but I will say I do love the flame job. That is a rather nice touch on him. I mean, I'm not sure how well it's coming off on the camera, but it does appear to be in a goldish color, so it does stand in a nice contrast to the silver paint on his windows. So all in all, I kind of like this one. This one's kind of a pretty good looking car mode. Got nice detail with the flame job. Let's see how he rolls on the table too. Well, did a nice 180 there. Just like some of the others, he rolls about okay. There we go. That was a nice roll. Got him to roll and do a partial turn, so that's kind of good. And that's Groundhog. And last and likely least liked member of the team is Motorhead. Motorhead here is the kiss-up of the group. He wants Barricade to notice him, and spends just about all of his time worrying about what Barricade thinks of him. Now, of course, there are other words to describe him, but we won't go into that, because this is a family-friendly channel here, folks. So I won't go into that for those of you whose children may be watching, but you know where I'm going with this. So Motorhead's skills, as Barricade has pointed out, especially in the More Than Meets the Eye guides, Motorhead does have the skill and potential that he could be the team's best driver, if he would get his head, and I quote, out of his tailpipe and focus on the race. Unfortunately, as many of us know, people that are like that never do change until something real bad happens and forces it. Alright, taking a look at Motorhead's articulation, he's kind of like Groundhog is. Raise his arm up about so far, put it back up against the body. He can, like the others, bend at the hip like so, and he can bend at the knees like so. And again, he's almost as snug here as Barricade. So, I don't know if that's just because this one wasn't played with a lot, or if that's how all of them are. So, kind of keep an eye on that, folks, if you're looking for a loose sample of this toy. And to transform him, this is going to sound like a broken record, folks, but we got to do it anyway. Fold the arms up against the sides. Fold the hood of the car up over his head. And fold the legs up and over just like that. And this is his alternate mode. He's a 1987 Chevy Corvette, specifically listed as a Callaway BK2. Not entirely certain what all that means, but anyways, not a bad looking car. I mean, it's about par for the course in terms of these Micromaster cars. I mean, there's a few of them. You do tend to see some of the cut lines and the hinges where they fold away for the robot mode, but otherwise it's not too bad looking. The yellow color does stand in a nice contrast to the others, and is muted enough. It's not like he's bright neon yellow like Roller Force is almost a neon pink. So this is a subdued color. It works, especially since the More Than Meets the Eye guides list him plainly as a plain Jane sports car. Because again, they don't have the copyright. They don't have the ability to list the actual models that they are without the risk of somebody wanting some money for it. And of course, if any of them out there are thinking they're going to get money from me, good luck. I'm not making any money at this. Alright, how does Motorhead roll? Actually pretty good. That's a stark contrast to many of them here. He actually rolls pretty darn good here on this table, so I'm impressed. I was beginning to think that all these guys were going to disappoint rolling on the table here, but finally we get one that actually does. Now, of course, as it should be obvious, but we'll state it anyway, the Racetrack Patrol here does not have any loose parts whatsoever. So we are going to move right on along now, as we have a complete Cardbacker. This is actually the UK variant of the Cardbacker, because it states right here on the back side, right down here, distributed in the UK. So this is the UK version. Give a nice shout out to all my UK fans out there. Good day everybody. If you're out at the pubs, raise a pint to me. Anyway, we got back here, on the front side of it, we got some nice artwork. Definitely want to give kudos to the previous owner of this Cardbacker, because we got very nice artwork here of all the figures. Groundhog, Roller Force, Barricade, and Motorhead. And they all would have been lined up individually underneath their respective robot mode in the cars. And of course, turn around to the back side here. And you got Motorhead there, giving the brief story of the Micromasters. And of course, along the top here, we got some of the others that were also available in this same wave. As you can see, 2 Autobots and just 1 Decepticon. Then down below, you've got short directions to transform everybody into the robot. And up here, just above it, you get kind of a picture of the robot and the vehicle. And everybody has their own personal motto, like Barricade, winning is everything. See, he must be a Misfits fan. Roller Force, unless you're behind me, you're in my way. Pretty good choice, given his character. Groundhog, the roar of an engine is music to my ears. Again, very appropriate, given his character. And Motorhead, burning rubber smells like victory. That one's kind of the more ambiguous. Just judging by the fact that he spends more of his time sucking up than he does trying to actually win a race. Anyway, down beneath here we got Barcode and the Robot Point. This group was worth 1 point, even though by 1990, at least here in the United States, all of the mail-away promotions had expired for the Transformers. And I don't think there were that many still going on around the world. So it leaves us to wonder, could we have substituted robot points for flag points in the G.I. Joe? I don't know, I might have to ask some G.I. Joe collectors if they know. Anyways, we go over here to the tech spec. We got a nice picture here of all 4 guys. As you'll notice, all 4 of their artwork there is the same as how it's presented here on the front of the card. It's done up in purple to indicate they're a Decepticon. It even says Decepticon above them. It gives their unit name as the Racetrack Patrol, and their function is Mobile Assault. Now, Mobile Assault, obviously, is assault on the move, so they are constantly rolling and attacking at the same time. So that would mean they are going through and attacking their enemies as they drive along. And more than likely, since they're all race cars, they make constant left turns and come back for another round. The unit's motto is, there are 2 kinds of fighters, Decepticons and losers. The ultimate speed demons. Learn to drive on Cybertron freeways with some of the meanest, nastiest drivers in the universe. Enjoy swerving in and out of traffic, cutting each other off, tailgating, and sending each other into tailspins. Kind of sounds like most people on the freeway, doesn't it? All equipped with turbo-powered Energon engines that can rocket them to speeds in excess of Mach 1. Often forget their mission and get sidetracked with their dangerous roadway antics. Obviously, they're having way too much fun Are they sure they didn't learn their driving skills from Grand Theft Auto? Extremely powerful when they work together as a team. Sometimes use their illegally powered engines to win drag races and help finance the Decepticons' latest evil schemes. Okay, when did the Decepticons actually need money? But then again, that's probably more used to bribe greedy, evil humans that they enlist to help them on a lot of their schemes and such. So, I guess that's probably what they're going for with that. Anyway, moving right along here to the tech spec. It's done in this different style of grid that uses a horizontal bar graph. And of course, it's also revised to cover the MicroMaster team itself. It lists their teamwork as 7, their cooperation and strength are 8, their endurance is 9, their speed naturally is a 10, their intelligence is 6, their courage is 8, and their skill is 9. So it does tend to back up what was said in their bio. They are a pretty cohesive and powerful unit. Now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of the Racetrack Patrol? The Racetrack Patrol is a decent group for a late addition in the Transformer lineup. I mean, of course, only really Barricade has gone on to gain more notoriety thanks to his appearances in the live-action movies. Hopefully, some of the other toy lines that are coming around will bring the other guys out and pay homage to their original forms, or at least to their character. As toys, they're about okay. They're starting to show the lack of care that Hasbro and Takara put into many of the earlier toys. As we noticed, quite a few of them really didn't roll that great on the table here. And let's also face it, since all 4 of them transformed roughly in about the same way, that's a lack of imagination more than anything else. And that unfortunately hurts them in the long run, as we all tended to enjoy those that transformed differently, as it made it more of a challenge to try to remember how do you transform them back and forth. Because let's face it, many of us as kids, we didn't keep the instructions forever. We would figure it out after a couple of times, and that'd be the end of it. We probably threw the instructions away, or just forgot about them, or whatever. And while making all these guys be the same makes it easier, it also tends to make them boring. Because there's really no thrill or excitement or whatever in transforming them if they all do it the same way. So that kind of hurts them the most. This group would definitely be worthy of being in the top tier, but the lack of imagination on them kind of forces me to bump them down into the middle tier. But they're just close to being in the top tier. They're a well-represented group with a different type of racing cars, so they can enter into a different variety of illegal races, not necessarily just drag races like the file card, like their tech spec card states. I could see them getting involved in a lot more illegal races, like you got a Formula One car and you got an off-road car. So you know they're going to be involved in more than just a simple drag race. And their characters, while some of them are kind of bland, they aren't too bad per se. They do have their quirks, and that makes them a little more interesting. So, like I said, all in all, I'm going to put them in the middle tier. And that concludes my review of the Generation 1 Decepticon Mobile Assault Unit, the Racetrack Patrol. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Don't forget as well, hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. And please also consider sharing your thoughts about the Racetrack Patrol in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.